The 90s was a fun time to grow up, and honestly, if you were lucky enough to experience wrestling during the late 80s and early 90s, you witnessed something completely different from what wrestling is today. Back then, wrestling wasn't trying to be realistic. It wasn't trying to be edgy. It wasn't trying to be cool. It was colorful. It was over the top. It was larger than life. And as kids, we loved every minute of it. During the early 1990s, both WWE and WCW relied heavily on cartoon-style characters and family-friendly entertainment. The goal was simple: create characters that children could instantly recognize. You had wrestlers based on occupations. The Repo Man was literally a thief who stole people's possessions. Duke the Dumpster Droese was a garbage man carrying a trash can to the ring. Big Boss Man was a prison guard carrying his famous nightstick. Erwin R. Shyster, better known as IRS, was a corrupt tax collector who spent his time warning fans about paying their taxes. Looking back today, it sounds ridiculous, but at the time, it worked because every character stood out. Then you had the larger-than-life personalities. The Undertaker wasn't just a wrestler. He was a supernatural mortician. The man stuffed people into body bags and looked like he had stepped out of a horror movie. The Berserker was a screaming Viking who looked like he wanted to start a war every time he walked to the ring. Tatanka was presented as a proud Native American warrior. Yokozuna was an unstoppable sumo giant who terrified everyone standing in front of him. Every wrestler had a clear identity. Every wrestler felt unique. And then there were the superheroes, the men every child wanted to be. Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior, the bright colors, the muscles, the energy, the messages about believing in yourself. To kids growing up during that period, these men weren't wrestlers. They were superheroes. And nobody was bigger than Hulk Hogan. Hogan wasn't just the face of WWE. He was WWE. When Vince McMahon wanted to expand his company across America and eventually the world, Hulk Hogan became the man carrying that flag. His rivalry with the Iron Sheik remains one of the most important feuds in wrestling history. The Iron Sheik represented the foreign villain. Hulk Hogan represented the American hero. In January 1984, Hogan defeated the Iron Sheik for the WWF Championship inside Madison Square Garden. That victory launched Hulkamania. Many wrestling historians consider that moment the beginning of WWE's rise into a global powerhouse. If you've never seen that match or heard the Iron Sheik talk about that period, I strongly recommend checking it out. The stories surrounding those years are incredible. But what happened next shocked wrestling fans everywhere. Then you had Sergeant Slaughter. For years, he was one of WWE's biggest heroes, a former United States Marine character. Aggressive, tough, patriotic. Fans loved him. Which made it even more shocking when he turned his back on America during the Gulf War storyline in 1990. Suddenly, the hero became the villain. Fans were furious. The reaction was enormous because people genuinely felt betrayed. That's something wrestling did brilliantly during those years. It made you care. Love them or hate them, the characters made you feel something. And that's why so many of us still talk about that era today. Because it wasn't just wrestling. It was an experience. Those colorful characters eventually gave way to a new generation. Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart, The Undertaker, Steve Austin, The Rock, Triple H, Mick Foley. Many of the young stars of that period would go on to become legends. Some are still involved in wrestling today. Others have sadly passed away. But their legacy remains. What makes this period special is that we literally watched careers grow before our eyes. We watched Shawn Michaels transform from a tag team wrestler into the Heartbreak Kid. We watched Bret Hart become one of the greatest technical wrestlers of all time. We watched The Undertaker evolve from a mysterious character into a living legend. Then came Stone Cold Steve Austin. Then came The Rock. And wrestling would never be the same again. The colorful cartoon era slowly disappeared. The Attitude Era was on the horizon. Wrestling became more aggressive, more unpredictable, more adult. But without the foundation built by Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior, Randy Savage, The Undertaker, the Iron Sheik, Sergeant Slaughter, and so many others, the Attitude Era may never have happened. The 90s weren't perfect, but they were unforgettable. The storylines, the characters, the rivalries, the heroes, the villains, the memories. And honestly, that's why so many veteran wrestling fans still talk about that era with a smile. Because for many of us, wrestling wasn't just something we watched, it was part of our childhood. And no matter how much wrestling changes, nobody can ever take those memories away. That's why the 90s remain one of the greatest periods in wrestling history.